Welcome to the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Burkeen.
Hi, everyone. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report. I'm your host, Lee Burkeen. Today's show, I'm excited to announce that we're going to talk about the Bayou 25 today. And what is the Bayou 25? It's my top 25 players in Louisiana, talent-wise. Ranked. These are ranked not with stars, but just ranked from 25 to 1. And I'm going to go over each kid that I've seen play throughout the last 4 years, some of them 2 years, some of them just started 1 year. And we're going to go over what they bring to the table, who they signed with early. And it's actually 30 players overall because 5 kids tied at 25. So we're going to be talking about 30 players. And we're going to get really deep into this about why they're so good. And I think people can appreciate that. Just someone like myself that's been doing it since 1991, evaluating these kids, been doing this for a long time. I started with the Bayou 25 in 1998 in our magazine. And we were doing it when we were doing several publications and not just the preview magazine. And if you've ever read our preview magazine, you know, that comes out usually in August, September every year. And so we quit doing the Bayou 25 probably around 2007, 2006, but now we're putting it on our website and we're sharing it on this great podcast that we're doing to our listeners and followers out there in Louisiana and all over the country. We're also going to talk about today LSU's new defensive coordinator, Durante Jones. Give you my 2 cents, what I think of the hire moving forward. And also Tennessee just hired their new coach, Josh Heupel from Central Florida, which is crazy. Since 2008, Tennessee's had 6 head coaches in football. 6. Isn't that crazy? Since 2008, 6 head coaches. 6. Since Philip Fulmer had to resign because of investigations. And here they are being investigated again since 2008 for the second time. And Josh Heupel is the new coach who finished a blistering 6-4 in 2020 at Central Florida. Let's go ahead and go into LSU's new defensive coordinator first, Durante Jones, who comes over from the Minnesota Vikings as the defensive back coach. He's never been a defensive coordinator at the D1 level. He's been a defensive coordinator at the D3 level. You know, I don't know him in coaching. You know, when he was at Jesuit, he wasn't the head coach. He wasn't in Louisiana long. They show that he was in Louisiana, a couple of high schools. But let me give you my take on this. Most people are looking at this is who's the big name they can hire. That's not what this is about. What this is about is hiring a guy that can relate to the players. And 2, do you have the personnel? If you don't have the players, you're not going to do well on defense. This game's turned into having the talent. Good players make good coaches. And so I think people look at the hire, you know, oh, it's not a big name. You know, that's not really important. What's important is someone young enough, like this coach, Durante Jones, is young enough to relate. He's the right age. He's got enough experience. He coached in the NFL for 5 years. He coached at Nicholls State. He's coached at Hawaii. He's coached in the Canadian Football League. What matters here is talent. You know, what kind of talent will LSU put on the field in 2021 on defense? Will it be an average talented 11 guys? And who will they hire at D-line coach and linebacker coach? That's going to be the key to this defense, not just Durante Jones, who, you know, obviously he's good enough to take this position or they wouldn't have hired him, but it all comes down to talent. Does LSU have the safeties and linebackers you need to run whatever defense you're going to run? And a lot is overrated about, a 3-4 defense or a 4-3. Your defense is always multiple in every game. You're never going to line up the same every play. Depends on the offense you're facing every week. Most offenses, coaches will agree with me on this, are going to be spread at times. At times it'll be a power I at times. If it's 3rd and 1, then they take their 4 receivers off the field and they go with 2 receivers or maybe 1. So your defense is always multiple. So as a defensive coordinator, you've got to have the players. And you've got to have the DBs. And so this basically what this comes down to me, is for Durante Jones to be successful in Baton Rouge, they've got to get all their players back, like Elias Ricks. You got to get Stingley back in the game to where he was his freshman season. They've got to get their D-line right. They got to get depth. They got to go get another linebacker. They've got to have the players. Do they have the players? I think they're close, but they got to sign and finish really well in recruiting. And they've got to keep their players in the program. Ed Orgeron's got to keep these kids from transferring. With this new transfer portal rule, it's just crazy right now. I know it's a new world. I think Ed's been quoted it's a new world. But, hey, the bottom line, you got to keep your kids on your roster that you need to play. The guys on your 2 deep or 3 deep, you got to keep them from leaving. I don't care if they hire the late Vince Lombardi to run the defense. If you don't have the players, my point of this is that it's not going to work. You've got to have the talent. I'm not talking about the talent just to play in the conference against Kentucky or Vanderbilt. I'm talking about the talent to beat Alabama, Auburn, Florida, Georgia, all the top programs right now in the conference. And now Arkansas is coming up, and Ole Miss is coming up. Mississippi State is going to be improved. It's going to be a better league this coming year. So that's my thoughts on this new defense coordinator. It's not who they're hiring. It's the talent. The talent that Durante Jones will have to work with. They did get their D-line as of today to come back to the 221 season. All their young guys like Andre Anthony, Glenn Logan, a lot of the guys they needed to get back on their D-line to have depth. But let's see if they can get these guys to come back for the fall and for the spring and not leave the program. That's going to be the key to this defense and this team. I mentioned about a month ago, you got to get Eric Gilbert back at tight end. You can't let him go. They need him. You can't lose your top recruits and try and win championships. And so I think they'll hire a really good linebackers coach and D-line coach because LSU's got the money to, those are not $2 million a year jobs. Most of those positions go from anywhere from $600,000 or $700,000 for the real good D-line coaches and linebacker coaches. I do like to hire in general because this is a guy that knows safeties, and he's, he did a lot of blitzing in Minnesota. He was a position coach in the NFL. It wasn't like he was an assistant of an assistant. He was a position coach. And he's not familiar with the SEC, but he's familiar with big-time football. But, again, just to give you an example, Bill Bush was fired as a DB coach, as a safeties coach this past year for LSU. And he looked pretty good as a coach a year ago at Grant Delpit at safety. And then when they didn't have a Grant Delpit in 2020 or anything like Grant Delpit, obviously it made the coach look bad. Players make coaches look very good. Now, coaches do teach kids the scheme. And coaches do teach fundamentals in practice. But if you don't have talent, you can't win championships. And so for this young coach, Durante Jones, to be successful, they're going to have to keep their team together. Otherwise, you can't be successful if you don't have the talent. That's what happened in 2020. They didn't have the talent to stop the run or the pass. They didn't have the linebackers. They didn't have the safeties. They didn't even have cornerback depth. and obviously didn't have Stingley for most of the season. We're going to go take a break. When we come back, we're going to go into our Bayou 25 and talk about the top players. We're going to start from 25 down. I think you'll enjoy this. We'll be right back. Listen, whatever you're driving right now, Tommy Harvey wants it. Bring it in to Harvey Subaru, Lexus of Shreveport, Bossier City, or John Harvey Toyota. They're paying big bucks for all trades right now. They'll cut you a check right there. Tell them Lee sent you. Welcome back. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report. I'm your host, Lee Burkeen. The first topic was the LSU hire Durante Jones from the Minnesota Vikings, the new LSU defensive coordinator. I gave my 2 cents about how he'll be successful. It's all about talent. Regardless if they hired somebody from, Appalachian State or someone from, or they hired Durante Jones, whoever it was going to be, it's all about talent. If you don't have the talent, you can't have a good defense. Let's face it. If you don't have the linebackers and safeties and corners, and you don't have plenty of them, the teams in the country right now, before we get into the Bayou 25 this segment, the teams that are unstoppable if you don't have the talent, because their offenses are so well-oiled at wide receiver and quarterback and offensive line, are people like Alabama, Ohio State, Clemson, Oklahoma, and now, believe it or not, North Carolina's headed that way with talent. You can't defend these teams unless you have the talent. And LSU's got to finish out in recruiting and get a couple of more linebackers, and they got to keep their guys on defense. Let's go ahead and go into the Bayou 25. These are the top 25 players in the state of Louisiana for the class of 221. This is seniors only. These are kids that are going to be freshmen for this coming fall season for college football. And this is in order. Now, I'm going to start from 25 up. I'm going to go backwards to get to number 1. And there's 5 kids that tie for 25. These are not ranked in any order, these 5. They're all tied for 25. I'm going to start with C.J. Caesar, who's number 25 from Iowa, Louisiana, right outside of Lake Charles, Louisiana. His dad, Clarence Caesar, if you remember, was a basketball star for Dale Brown. Clarence was a 6'7" forward. Remember Clarence Caesar? He was pretty good. Now CJ, the reason he makes this list is because he's a legit 6'3". He's 205 pounds. He runs a 4.5 in the 40, and he played cornerback. He's the most gifted big DB in the state. He could be a safety, free safety, or strong safety. He could be a nickel corner. He can also return punts. That's how gifted he is for a big guy. CJ, when you look at him in pads and you see him on a field, he looks like a college senior. He signed with ULL of Lafayette, another great get by the Raging Cajuns. He's an SEC player. He's big time. He's good enough to go to an LSU and play and be an impact guy. I think he'll end up being a safety at ULL, grow out of his DB position at corner, and I think he can end up being an outside linebacker. He could actually weigh about 220 and run about a 4.5 40. He can end up being that great, big, great-looking outside linebacker that you strive to have. Kind of what Dave Aranda did at LSU, where it signed guys and they grew into the position at linebacker. Also at 25, tied for 25, is a defensive end buck linebacker from DeRidder High School, right outside of Lake Charles, by the name of Darren Griffin. I had a chance to see Darren Griffin play this year in full game film. Not highlight tape, but full game film. And every play, this kid, his first step off the ball as a DN was like a heat-seeking missile. He runs a 4.5 40. He stands a legit 6'3", weighs 215 pounds. He's long and lean, and he looks like Arden Key that played at LSU. Very gifted. Phenomenal. Would probably be ranked a little higher. He's going to have to go to a junior college, but he would be a national recruit in 2 years if he decides to go to a junior college. I think he would be LSU would be all over him in 2 years coming from a junior college. He might go to like Gulf Coast, somewhere in Kansas, somewhere in Texas. I don't know where he's going, but I even told the high school coach at DeRidder, Coach Parmley, I said, man, this guy's the best football player I've seen come out of DeRidder in 30 years. He's that good. He's going to weigh about 240 when he's done. He's probably almost going to be about almost 6'4". And I think he's an NFL player. If this kid goes to junior college, and Deron Griffin, if you're listening, please do that because God gave you a lot of talent. Also at 25, tied for 25 on the Bayou 25 list, is Kaden Williams from Karen Crow High School, a running back. A 4-year starter for Karen Crow. A kid that started at 170 pounds his freshman year. Now he's about 200 pounds of muscle, 5'11". He's committed to ULL in Lafayette. Going to sign with ULL on February the 3rd. We confirmed that with his coach. He's still going to sign with him. Has been offered by many, many D1 schools. What I like about Kaden Williams is that he's tough as nails, and he's got a great burst. And he's a power back with power, yet he's got the hips to run between the tackles, the power to take the hits. He's the reason that Karen Crow, one of the reasons that they won a state championship in 2020 on the public side of Class 5A. Kaden Williams is good enough to play at LSU, but it's one of those sayings, you can't take them all. So LSU took a couple of backs this year from out of state. If they would have chose to stay in state, it would have probably been this kid. Where Kevin Falk went to school, Kevin Falk was recruiting the running backs. But remember Kaden Williams, he's going to be phenomenal. I think he plays next year for UL because they lose 2 senior running backs. Well, we'll see that. They get their extra year back. We'll see what they do. We'll see what the running backs do at UL. But if they do come back, I still think he plays and gets in that rotation. 2 more kids before we take a break that are tied at 25. The next kid I want to talk about is Gage Lavredan from Riverside High School. Gage, sorry about that call there on the. But Gage is a 5'9", 170-pound athlete who is one of the great players in Louisiana. He's kind of like the Puka Williams from Hahnville that went to Kansas. Gage is an incredible athlete. He's played 5 positions for Riverside. What I like about Gage is that he's got something you can't teach, and that's speed and instincts on the field and in space. He's incredible. His moves are sick. His ability to cut on a dime and his ability to make plays, whether it's at corner, running back, receiver, he is incredible. From Riverside High School in Reserve, Louisiana, at 25, Gage Lavredan is an incredible player. I don't know where he's going to end up. Right now he's uncommitted, but he's going to be a great player, kind of like a big version of Trendon Holiday, who used to play for LSU from Northeast High School, played in a little bit in the NFL. A little taller, about 5'9". You know, Trendon was like 5'5". But he's got those, the ability to cut and make people miss and that God-given talent. The next player tied at number 25 is the sleeper of the LSU recruiting class for 221 is Matthew Langlois. Matthew from Catholic Pointe-Coupee High School in New Roads. I had a chance to see this kid play his junior year in 2019 in person. And Matthew intercepted 2 passes in the first half of a game against Dunham. And he scored 2 touchdowns all in the first half. It's not the stats, it's his athletic ability. He's got a little bit of Craig Steltz in him that played at Archbishop Rummel and LSU, played a little bit with the Chicago Bears. Not as big as a Steltz, more on the size of a Jack Hunt, but a little bigger than Jack Hunt coming out of high school, a little thicker. And he's very strong. But Matthew is going to be a strong safety at LSU or a wide receiver as a slot receiver. He can play either one, and I think he'll be a kid that goes into camp and will be given the opportunity to see where he fits in best, whether it's a slot receiver position or strong safety. I know most people think he's going to be a safety, but that's not a guarantee. This kid, I thought, was a better offensive player than he was a safety. And the reason he can play safety because he's tough. He weighs about 185. He's about 5'11" and some change. He's probably maxing out on his weight. Might get about 190 at LSU. But if he goes to receiver, he'll probably stay the size he is now. But he's got great hands. And he can run. I mean, this kid runs a 4.5 40. And he can make it happen as a receiver. And I think LSU needs a slot receiver, a guy with good hands, good routes. I think that's probably where he'll settle in when it's said and done. When we come back, we're going to talk about 24, 23, 22, 21, and so forth, trying to get down to the number one player in Louisiana for the class of 2021, our Bayou 25. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report. We'll be right back. Looking for a used car? Harvey Autos has 3 dealerships, which means 3 times the used vehicles. They've got everything from fuel-efficient compacts to luxury models, even hybrids, and certified pre-owned with a warranty. Check out John Harvey Toyota, Harvey Subaru, or Lexus of Shreveport, Bossier City. Welcome back. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report. I'm your host, Lee Burkeen. We actually have one more 25 player that tied for 25 is Luke Besh, a wide receiver from Jesuit High School in New Orleans, Louisiana. Luke Besh is not, don't get him confused with Jack Besh from St. Thomas More High School. We're going to get to him in a minute on the list that committed, signed with LSU. This is Luke Besh from Jesuit High School in New Orleans. Luke is one of these kids that I think he runs the best routes in the state. I think he's got some of the best hands in the state. And he runs a 4.5 in the 40. He's been offered by Army. He's been offered by a lot of prep schools. He's been offered as a walk-on to Louisiana Tech and Tulane. And I think he's a diamond in the rough that caught some phenomenal passes. He can do phenomenal things on the field. He's 6 foot, 185 pounds, and he's got a lot of speed. And he's got, again, he's got college hands. And he's like watching a college receiver in his route running. I think Luke is the best, most polished receiver in New Orleans coming out of high school. Some kids are taller. Some kids are bigger. But if you're looking for a polished receiver that's got 4.5 speed with great hands and great routes, you want to sign Luke Besh. And he's not committed right now. I know Army's trying to get him to commit. You know, the Army at West Point. I know they're talking to him, which is a big-time D1 school. But I think he's SEC good. I think he could play at Kentucky. He could play at South Carolina. He could play at Vanderbilt. You know, he could play at Missouri. Those second echelon SEC schools, I think he could play right away. He's got phenomenal IQ of the game. And if you saw his highlight tape, you would understand really quick why he's special. We're going to continue on. Number 24 is a kid that is from my old high school, Central High School in Baton Rouge, Devin Armstead. Armstead is a safety who could play corner that signed with TCU. He's 6'1", 180, and he's super athletic, super intelligent with football instincts, and he closes. Something you didn't see a lot at LSU last year from their safeties. This guy will come up and hit you. He'll defend the pass. He can cover down the field. He can help the corners on the deep routes. The key is he can run a 4.45 in the 40. He's qualified. I talked to actually TCU's football coaches yesterday. I got a friend on the staff that was at Neville, and they're really excited that he's coming in. They think he'll play right away at TCU. They think he'll be a contributor as a true freshman. This Armstead kid's got a lot of talent. I thought he was an LSU safety. I really did. But TCU got a steal. Number 23 is Kaden Costa from Mandeville High School. Kaden is 6'1", 200 pounds. He's a kicker. He signed with Ole Miss. What makes Kaden special? Why is a kicker number 24 on your list, Lee? Well, Every kickoff is 5 yards deep in the end zone. That's what they're looking for. He's 90% on field goals. He's got a leg that can go to 60 yards. He's a phenomenal talent. He's the best kicker in the state. He's the most polished kicker in the state. And again, they're looking for kids who can kick the ball in the end zone 5-6 yards every time. And he can punt if needed to be a 40-yard average punter. He could punt if needed, but he's a kicker. Number 22 on our list on the Bayou 25 is Tyreese Johnson from Booker T. Washington in New Orleans. 6'2", 195 pounds, gifted athlete. Would be a receiver or a corner or a safety. Here's a kid that can play wherever you need him. If you want him to be a receiver, he could catch 50 passes. If you want him to make 100 tackles as a DB, then you put him at DB. Wherever he's not committed right now. He was committed to Memphis, but he's no longer committed, so he's wide open to where he's going to sign February 3rd. But Tyreese Johnson is a gifted football player. And what I like about him is I've watched him play the last 2 years. He is tough. Man, this kid's tough. Not only that, he's God-gifted with 4.45 speed, and he's big. And he is a tough kid. I mean, he sees, and he moves, and he reacts, and he makes the tackles, and he can get there really fast. I think he could end up being an outside linebacker when he's done growing. He's someone that Dave Aranda would put at linebacker and bulk him up in college. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we're going to continue on with our number 21 on our list, Hunter Herring from Ouachita Christian. We'll talk about Hunter, and then we're still getting down to number one player in the state for our Bayou 25. We'll be right back. So, hey, guys, just wanted to take a minute to tell you about Harvey Autos. If you need a new or used car, there's 3 great dealerships right here worth checking out. John Harvey Toyota, Harvey Subaru, and Lexus of Shreveport, Bossier City. Low prices, honest people. Tell them Lee sent you. Welcome back. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report. I'm your host, Lee Burkeen. We're going over our Bayou 25, the top players in Louisiana for the class of 221, ranked in order of ability. And again, these are ranked based on the most gifted players in the state. Not what you did stat-wise, not what you did, not if you won a championship. This is about your ability, the most gifted players in the state, the most ready, too, for college, the most polished. As we get down on this, they're going to be even more polished as players, meaning ready to go at the D1 level. Continuing on, let's go to number 21 on our list. Is a great young man from Monroe, Louisiana. His name is Hunter Herring, who's the quarterback for Ouachita Christian in Monroe for Coach. Man, the coaching staff there is phenomenal. The coaching staff, the school at Ouachita Christian, they finished runner-up to Calvary Baptist. Coach Fitzhugh. But they've won several state championships. But Hunter Herring is going to ULL. He signed with ULL in Lafayette as a quarterback, but I think he could be a tight end. A lot of people don't like when I say where a guy might play, but I'm good at looking at where you might play in college compared to where you played in high school. And college coaches agree with me on this. But if it doesn't work out at quarterback, he would make, I think he could be an NFL tight end. He runs a 4.7, 4.69 40. At 6'4", 220 pounds. He has a good arm. He's a good leader. He runs well. I don't think he's polished to come in and play as a quarterback because that's really hard to do unless you're really polished. But as an athlete, he's a phenomenal athlete. And he's a big kid that can run. So if he plays quarterback and becomes a better quarterback, I'm happy for him. If he becomes a tight end, I think he could play in the NFL. At number 20, staying in North Louisiana at Ruston High School, Catravion Hardgrove, who is actually not signed yet, is a running back, 6 foot, 200 pounds, from Ruston High School. And he's looking at some big-time schools. He's got 4 or 5 Power 5 schools that have offered him And I think he's going to sign with a major college when this is over. And he can run the football. He missed a lot of games his senior year because of an injury. But, man, his junior year was off the charts. This is a kid who has NFL ability. He's got the burst you look for when you hit the hole. He's got the size and power you look for. And he's a guy, when healthy, can carry the ball 15, 20 times a game and be that guy. Contrarian Hargrove is a stud running back from Ruston High School. And wherever he goes, we're going to hear his name, and we're going to hear his name possibly in the NFL one day. At number 19 is a sleeper who people don't really know a lot about. From Bogalusa High School, a receiver by the name of Raheem Roberts, who I've watched for 4 years. 6'3", 190 pounds of muscle with God-given speed and God-given effort. I think he's an NFL player one day. He was committed to Memphis, but he's no longer committed. He's going to sign with a big school. Raheem Roberts is as good as any wide receiver that you can talk about this year. He's up there with Jack Besh, Brian Thomas, Luke Besh, all the great ones, Tyreese Johnson. But Raheem has that size, his ability, and his efforts off the charts, and he can run. And he's got great hands. He's got all the boxes checked. I mean, remember the name Raheem Roberts from Bogalusa. Now, when I think of Bogalusa, I think of Kendrick Allen that went to LSU, Orlando Lundy that went to Mississippi State, a quarterback, Sean Smith that went to Grambling, that was 6'7", a big D tackle, played for the Bears. Bogalusa had many of them back in the 70s, 60s, and 80s. Raheem Roberts is going to be an NFL player. He's a big guy that can run. He reminds me of a more gifted Terrace Marshall from Parkway from LSU. At number 18 is another big-time player, Destin Pazan Hill. Destin is 6'1", 190", a wide receiver from Edna Carr in Algiers, Louisiana, right outside of New Orleans, Louisiana. Why is Destin Hill so highly ranked on this list at number 18? Because he is gifted. His speed is sick. He can run a 4.40 legitimately at 190, 5'11", 6 foot tall. He's got great hands now. He's got NFL ability to be a high NFL draft pick. He's not signed. He's wide open for signing day. He was committed to Florida State, but he decommitted from the Seminoles. It's kind of weird that they're losing recruits and they're not even competing with LSU on recruits anymore. Boy, the program has fallen at Florida State. But Destin Hill is a guy that it wouldn't shock me. If LSU did take a receiver, it would be him, if not Brian Thomas from Walker. But this kid's got all, and look, he could be an NFL corner. He could be an NFL safety or a receiver, but I think he's too big of a playmaker. Man, this kid's special. One more player before we take a break. At number 17 is the best offensive lineman in the state no one knows about. He signed with Arkansas from Beau High School, right outside of Lafayette. Devin Manuel, 6'7", 330 pounds of muscle. He's about 7 foot tall in length. I saw this kid in 2 games this year, and he had 30 pancake blocks. He's got great feet. He's mean, and he's going to Arkansas to play for one of the best O-line coaches in the country, the head coach at Arkansas. I think he was a big miss by LSU, Devin Manuel. Beau Sheen High School in right outside of Lafayette. Not known for producing big-time football players. Not known for D1 guys. But let me tell you something. Remember the name Devin Manuel. He is probably got 3% body fat and almost 6'8" in height. I love, though, when the ball snapped, he goes after players. He pancakes and finishes people. Like, he don't block. He blocks and puts you in the ground. And he's 6'7.5", 330 pounds. Unbelievable player. And he's going to Arkansas. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we'll get back to our Bayou 25. We're down to number 16. We're going to get to 16. We're trying to work our way to the number 1 player in the state for the class of 2021 in Louisiana. We'll be right back.
Parents, are you looking for advice on getting your high school athlete recruited by the right college? Lee Brecheen is your answer. Lee has been doing it for over 30 years. He knows the ropes, and more importantly, he knows the people. Lee offers turnkey service from evaluation, creating highlight tapes in the correct format, and complete guidelines for effective communication with the schools. No matter the sport, girl or boy, no matter what grade your child is in, let Lee Brecheen help match your child to the right college fit. Go to our website, lafootballmagazine.com, and get connected today.
Welcome back. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report. I'm your host, Lee Brecheen. We're going over the top players in the state, the Bayou 25. And we just mentioned number 17, Devin, Manuel, a big tackle going to Arkansas. And I guess I didn't have my cup of coffee this morning. kind of been working a lot, but pronouncing the name is Beau High School around Lafayette is his school. Going to 16 is, to me, one of the best DBs in Louisiana from Madison Prep in Baton Rouge. Tyrell Raby from Madison Prep. He signed with Memphis. Memphis has got a lot of good Louisiana players. They usually take the players LSU doesn't have room for, or they don't evaluate correctly, or someone that's big time. They usually go to Memphis. But Tyrell Raby is a DB that's 6'1", 175 pounds, very gifted, great hips. He's the kind of corner you're looking for in a spread offense. He also plays the run. And I thought he had one of the best senior seasons of anybody in the state that improved. He improved from being a D1 to a major D1 player. And Memphis is getting a phenomenal player from Louisiana. I think Tyrell Raby is going to start as a freshman for Memphis in 221. This is 2 years in a row that Madison Prep's had a big-time D1 DB. They actually had 2 DBs last year signed D1. One with Georgia, Major Burns, that played as a freshman. We're going to continue on with our list, and we're getting down to the list. We're not too far from saying the top player in the state. This is fun, right? I mean, this is fun going over this stuff. I enjoy it. Number 15. Number 15 is Keon Coleman from Opelousas Catholic in Opelousas, Louisiana. Keon was committed to the University of Kansas in Les Miles, but he was also committed for basketball and football. Now, here's the deal with Keon. I talked to Keon over the phone. LSU wanted him as a corner, but Keon wants to play receiver, and that's the reason he's not going to LSU. LSU offered him, but he didn't want to be a cornerback, and I think he's a great cornerback. He's 6'3", 200 pounds, has a 40-inch vertical jump. He's aggressive. He's a freak of nature as a corner, but he wants to be a receiver. He told me, he said, Mr. Lee, I want to catch balls. I want to be a playmaker on offense. Well, that's, if you know what you want. But that's the reason a lot of schools didn't recruit him for football, because he wants to be a receiver. And Kansas said you could be a receiver. So he's wide open to where he's going to sign. I don't know if he's going to sign for basketball or football, but whatever this kid chooses to do, and he would be ranked higher if it was one sport. But whatever this kid chooses to do, he's going to be a pro player either in the NBA or the NFL. Keon Coleman, I watched on film in a full game in 2019, and he made plays that you see from guys like Chad Jones or Grant Delpit or Tyrann Mathieu. He's a baller, and he's gifted. Man, he would be a great corner. I wish Keon would play corner in college. I really do. Number 14 is Mccain Williams from John Ehret High School on the West Bank, right there by New Orleans, Louisiana. John Ehret High School is known for producing some great players. Kane was my number one player going into the state of Louisiana for this year. He gained some weight, good weight. He's going to be a linebacker, I think, in college. I mean, he'll probably start off at safety for Nick Saban, but he likes to move his guys to linebacker. Once they get to about 205, 210, especially when you're 6'2", and Kane is gifted. What I love about Mccain Williams is he'll knock your head off. I mean, if you want a hitter, you want an intimidator, he's the guy. Him and Sage Ryan from Lafayette Christian were, to me, the most physical guys that will they'll decleat you. And that's why Mccain Williams is so highly regarded. That's why Nick Saban wanted him. He is an intimidator. And I think he'll become a linebacker. Now, he might lose some weight and go to safety and he was 190 when I saw him play as a freshman at 6'2". Now he's about 205, 210. I think he'll end up being about 220, 230 and be like a Christian Harris from U-High who's at Alabama. Grew into a linebacker position at outside linebacker. But Mccain Williams is an intimidator. And as a freshman, I saw him play as a freshman in person against Hahnville. And he took over the game. And there were 7 seniors on that team that signed college scholarships that year, and he was a freshman safety. And he was the best player on the field that night. Number 13 is Cameron Foster from Northwood High School in Shreveport, Louisiana. He signed with McNeese State. Let me tell you something. Frank Wilson got a steal here at the number 13 spot here on our Bayou 25. Cameron Foster has great feet, and he's mean, and he uses his hands like he's in the pros. He's 6'3" legitimately. He's 310 pounds. He pulls. He can also be a big-time D tackle. I think he has NFL feet. He gives you high effort. He's got great hands. He's got great lean to him as an O-lineman. He gets low, and as a D lineman, he chases ball carriers sideline to sideline. Cameron Foster was a man among boys in high school. And I saw Cameron play both in 2018 and 19 and 20. He is an SEC football lineman, and he's going to McNeese State. And if you're a McNeese State fan hearing this, if you're a Cowboy fan in Lake Charles, you just got a future all-conference, Southland Conference offensive guard or D tackle in Cameron Foster, only because the kid wanted to stay close to home. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to get back to number 12 on our Bayou 25, and we're getting to number 1. We're almost there. Our top players in the state of Louisiana for the class of 2021. Seniors only. We'll be right back. Listen, whatever you're driving right now, Tommy Harvey wants it. Bring it in to Harvey Subaru, Lexus of Shreveport, Bossier City, or John Harvey Toyota. They're paying big bucks for all trades right now. They'll cut you a check right there. Tell them Lee sent you. Welcome back. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report. I'm Lee Burkeen, your host. We're going to continue with our Bayou 25, the top players in the state of Louisiana. Let's go to number 12. Here's a kid who didn't even play his senior year because he transferred from Como High School in Lafayette to Southside High School in Youngsville. So he wasn't able to get eligible for his senior year at Southside. Now, when you see him signed in paperwork or in the newspaper or the internet, it says Southside, but he played for Como his freshman, sophomore, and junior seasons. He played for Coach Dotson. And I saw Malik Neighbors play in 2019 and 18 for Como High School. He's a wide receiver. He's a defensive back. He's a legitimate 6'1", about 190, and he's gifted. He's very gifted. And I love his toughness. He's a 4.5 guy in the 40, but what I love about him as a receiver is his ability to cut his hips for a big guy. He fits what LSU has continued to bring on campus, the Kashawn Buttes, the Terrace Marshalls, the Jamar Chases, or if you want him at corner, he could be a great corner because he's physical and he can lock down man coverage, and he's incredible as a hitter. So here's a guy that he might be listed as a receiver, but it's where LSU needs him. And Malik, I think LSU probably needs him more as a DB than a receiver. And he'll be a pro football player. He'll be an NFL guy at either side of the ball. He's just a great athlete. Malik Neighbors did not play his senior year. If he would have, he probably would have been offered by everybody in the country. But this works out for both parties. Based on him going to LSU's camp, based on his junior year at Como High School, he is phenomenal as a football player. And I love his intensity. He loves the game. And he punt returned. He was a kick returner at Como. He did everything. Number 11 is the best tight end in the state of Louisiana from Alexandria Ash High School in Alexandria, Louisiana. Shield Taylor. Here's one that might have got away from LSU. It's one of those things, if you knew you needed a tight end, but you didn't need a tight end 3 months ago, but you do now, if they don't get Gilbert back, Shield Taylor's is a ready now tight end, meaning he's ready to play at a high level. He's not a project. He's ready. He's physically 6'5", 235 pounds. He's a great blocker. He runs a 4.7 40. He's got great hands. He's smart. He's ready to go. Just give him a playbook. But he signed with Stanford. So he's going to play in the Pac-12 for Stanford, who's known for having great tight ends. Shield Taylor's a great student, and he'll play his freshman year at Stanford because he's gifted. Now, I think if LSU would have had more of a need at tight end 3 months ago, he was a guy I thought they should have took anyway because he's phenomenal. He's a guy that's going to be a Foster Morrow, and he's probably a little faster and a little more ahead of Foster as far as blocking. This kid's polished. He's ready to go. Give him a playbook. He's ready to go. At number 10, to me, the biggest sleeper in the state in North Louisiana, from Logansport High School, Savion Barnes. They call him K. Barnes up in Logansport. Played for Coach McGee. Signed with ULL. He is a big-time football player. 6 foot tall, 195 to 200 pounds. He played running back this year. He played DB, played linebacker. And what they're getting, the Cajuns are getting, they're getting a guy that's going to be an NFL player in 3 years. Barnes, to me, was a phenomenal running back with 4.5 speed, power. Man, he's intense. He's gifted. He was kind of like the Devin White of North Louisiana this year that played running back, but he'll go to linebacker or might play running back at UL. But they can play him at outside linebacker. He'll be about 210 probably by the time he reports. He could be a safety if he stays the size he is now, but he is an incredible football player. Remember the name. He's an SEC guy. You notice I mentioned a few of these UL guys in this list. They were very good with their homework. These are guys that I've had listed for 3 years. At number 9 is All-American D-tackle Mason Smith from Terrebonne High School, who signed with LSU. 6'4", legitimate 6'4", about 305 pounds. He reminds me of Al Woods, who played at Elton High School a few years ago. Remember Al Woods? Remember Al Woods was the Gatorade Player of the Year in Louisiana? Al Woods was an All-American. Al Woods ended up being a very good D-tackle, but not a pass rusher so much, but more of a guy that was hard to block and very gifted, very good kid. Mason Smith's a very good kid. He reminds me of Al Woods. Very smart, very gifted, but more of a nose guard D-tackle at the next level than a DN. If that makes any sense to my listeners. Not a Rashard Lawrence DN, not a Marcus Spears, not a Claude Roten, not a Kyle Williams, not a Glenn Dorsey, not a Chad Lavallee type, but more of an Al Woods, Kendrick Allen type of defensive tackle. Glenn Logan. Little more talent than Glenn Logan, a little bit. But he's going to be a guy that's super strong. He's a legitimate D tackle. That's his spot. He's going to play nose guard, or he's going to be a legitimate D tackle for LSU. He'll play as a freshman because they're going to need him to play as a freshman in the 2 deep. And he'll be better his sophomore, junior year than he will be his freshman year. He'll have to get used to it, just like, again, he reminds me a lot of Al Woods. And let me tell you something. Al Woods didn't get a lot of sacks at LSU, but he's playing now in his 8th year in the NFL, or is it 9 years? So not a bad comparison, and he's where I think these two are very similar in the way their bodies are, the way their ability are, and as kids. He's a smart kid. We're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're going to go to number 8. We're almost to number 1. We're going to go to number 8 in our Bayou 25, top players in Louisiana. We'll be right back. Looking for a used car? Harvey Autos has 3 dealerships, which means 3 times the used vehicles. They've got everything from fuel-efficient compacts to luxury models, even hybrids, and certified pre-owned with a warranty. Check out John Harvey Toyota, Harvey Subaru, or Lexus of Shreveport, Bossier City. Welcome back. You're listening to Sports Scouting Report. I'm your host, Lee Burkeen. Let's go ahead and go to number 8 in the state in our Bayou 25. This is the player that got away from LSU. And guess who signed him? Baylor, Dave Aranda. Jackie Marshall comes in at number 8 from East St. John High School, a linebacker who stands 6'2", 240 pounds, runs a 4.59 40. Didn't start playing football till his junior year, where he had 150 tackles. I saw Jackie play this year in a couple of full games. He's instinctive, he's fast, he's strong, and he can run. And that's what Dave Aranda did at LSU. He signed Patrick Queen. He signed Jacoby Stevens, who was really better as a linebacker last year, the year before, I mean. But Jackie Marshall will probably be the most talented linebacker to arrive at Baylor when he arrives on campus, and he'll learn from Dave Aranda. This is a guy that got away from LSU in their backyard. This is a guy that could come in and play, but he's going to Baylor to play for Dave Aranda. And obviously Dave Aranda was recruiting him when he was at LSU, and so that's what happens sometimes when you lose your coach and they start recruiting these high schools. But Jackie Marshall is one of the most physical, gifted linebackers that I've seen in the last 2 or 3 years. He's ready to go. Give him a playbook. He's polished. He's not a project. He's college strong. He's college fast, and he's college mean. And instead of having to bulk him up like he did with Queen and these other guys that he signed at LSU, Dave Aranda, he's ready to go at 240. He played running back this year at East St. John, too. He played not fullback. He played running back and helped his team to the 3rd round of the playoffs this year. He was a running back, too. And he played linebacker. He played the whole game. But you would have saw this kid as a running back. He was phenomenal. 6'2", 240 pounds with feet. And on defense as a linebacker, he's phenomenal. And again, he was a guy that got away from LSU right here in their backyard. At number 7, another player I thought that got away from LSU that was a big-time defensive end buck linebacker. And if LSU knew then what they know now, they lost a commitment from Florida as a DN. They could have got this kid locally, Byron Turner from St. Augustine Purple Knights in New Orleans. Comes in at number 7 as a defensive end buck linebacker. I saw Byron play in 2019, and when I noticed it made him special, besides him being 6'3", 245, running a 4.6, is his ability to rush the passer and how the effort he gave every play. But his gift, I mean, he runs like he's 180. Byron Turner is the complete pass rusher you look for, and he's not a project, meaning he is polished. He's 245 pounds of muscle. He's long and lean, and he's 6'3". He's long 6'3". And I watched him again this year against Zachary. Personally, I was there at the game this year at Zachary High School. And he had 3 sacks and about 12 hurries in that game. Holstein, that was Holstein's first start at quarterback, and I'm going to tell you, Holstein he grew up really fast having this guy rush him. And I was impressed with Holstein getting away from Byron a lot, but Byron was after him every play. But Byron Turner signed with Florida State. And he's going to play right away for Florida State. I think he's going to be a star at Florida State. And I think Byron Turner will be an NFL guy in 3 or 4 years. LSU did not recruit him real heavily at all. They thought they were getting a defensive end out of Florida that signed with Alabama. Again, those out-of-state guys sometimes will cost you in the end when you're trying to close with hometown kids. Number 6 is Chris Hilton, receiver from Zachary High School. Why is Chris at number 6? He's polished. He's a gamer. When the game's on the line, he wants the ball and he's going to win the game. He's an incredible athlete. High jumps, 7 feet tall. Runs a 4.45 40 or faster. Will block for you as a receiver. Will do everything. And by the way, he's gifted. And he's tough. A lot of receivers can run 4.5. A lot of guys are 5'11", 6 feet, 180. But he is the ultimate football player that you want on your team. Chris Hilton will go to LSU as a slot receiver. And he'll probably play as a freshman because he can block and he can do it all. He can catch underneath and he can catch the deep ball. And when the game's on the line and it's 3rd and 12, he wants the ball. And he's only, when he was 16 years old and he won the game against West Monroe in the Superdome. And I think it was 4th down and 10, and they were on their own 10-yard line, I believe, with less than a minute left in the game. He caught a pass and scored a touchdown to win that game. Wasn't fazed, wasn't nervous. He wanted the ball. And he wasn't going to be denied. And he's got he's almost a 38-inch vertical jump kid. He makes great catches in the end zone, the corner of the end zone. He's good vertically. Chris Hilton's going to be a great player at LSU. And you know what's crazy about Chris Hilton? If you told him, hey, I need you to play corner, he would, because he could be an NFL cornerback as well as a receiver. So he could be a DB at LSU, and I wouldn't pigeonhole him in just as a receiver. And I think he'd do it. He'd do it because he's a football player and he's a good kid. Number 5 is not the biggest guy in the state. And when LSU fans see him in the purple and gold this coming season, they're going to see he's not the biggest guy. His name is Sage Ryan from Lafayette Christian. And if you watched high school football this year and you just go by what you see on TV, you saw that he was a running back, but he's not a running back for college. He did that for his team. He played running back this year to help his team win a state championship. But if you watch Sage in 2019, 2018, and when he started as a freshman in 2017, like I did, you can see how special he is as a linebacker for the team, and really he's a safety. He's that strong safety that LSU needs to intimidate the other team. He's that strong safety that the new D coordinator, Durante Jones, needs to bring in on 3rd and 8 or 3rd and 5 to come in and blitz, cover the tight end, cover the running back, or just make a bone-jarring tackle. Sage Ryan is a playmaker, and he's strong. He reminds me like, I don't want to say he's Ronnie Lott from the San Francisco 49ers from back in my day, and a lot of our listeners know who Ronnie Lott is. But he's got that kind of mentality when he gets the football field, when he puts that helmet on. Sage Ryan will intimidate everybody on the field. And he's kind of like a Devin White in a way. He's a Devin White of strong safeties. And let me tell you why he's not that big. He's 5'10". He's 202 pounds. He's not a big guy. But let me tell you something. You're going to know who Sage Ryan is in the SEC week 1 of his freshman season. I would be shocked if Sage Ryan is not starting week 1 for LSU in 2021 at strong safety. He's one of the pieces of the puzzle that they needed to get their defense back, and he's going to be an incredible player for LSU, and he's a leader. We're going to take a break, and we've got our final 4 players to talk about when we come back. We got 4, 3, 2, and 1. We'll be right back. So, hey, guys, just wanted to take a minute to tell you about Harvey Autos. If you need a new or used car, there's 3 great dealerships right here worth checking out. John Harvey Toyota, Harvey Subaru, and Lexus of Shreveport, Bossier City. Low prices, honest people. Tell them Lee sent you. Welcome back. You're listening to the Sports Scouting Report. I'm your host, Lee Burkeen. We're talking about our Bayou 25. The top players in the state of Louisiana by talent, by God-given talent. Talent and the most ready to play, the most ready to come in and help the football team or help whoever out of high school. This is me scouting since 91 to tell you just their upside, the most ready players to go to college, and also kind of looking at where they might play in college. Number 4 is Brian Thomas Jr. from Walker High School, who did not sign, by the way. And going into our signing date that's going to be coming up February the 3rd, he's a national 100 player. I mean, I don't get into the national stuff, but I know he's I think he's one of the top players in the country. He's gifted. He's 6'4", between 190, 195. He's a basketball player that's learned the game of football, and he's become a very good one. He reminds me a lot of Michael Clayton that played at LSU. He runs like Michael Clayton. He's built like Michael Clayton. His game is like a Michael Clayton. If you remember Michael Clayton that played at Christian Life Academy that's no longer around, and then LSU, he was more of a glider. He was one of those tall receivers that made everybody look slow, kind of like a Julio Jones. Doesn't have Julio Jones speed, but he has more Michael Clayton 4.5 speed. But you know, when a guy's almost 200 pounds and he's 6'4", 6'8" in length, he's kind of hard to guard, especially when he's gifted. And what Brian did so good in high school, and what I watched him do in person 3 different times over the 3 years I've watched him play, is when the ball is in the air and somebody's got to go up and get it, it's his. He's going to get the ball. You're not getting it. He's going to be tough to defend in college. Especially the end zone passes thrown up, the timing passes in the end zone, it's his. He's kind of like a Jamar Chase when it comes to hands. I mean, if it's a 50-50 ball, he's going to go up and get it. That's that basketball resume that he has. He's got great hands. And he's smooth. Very smooth. And I also saw him play cornerback at Walker, and he was phenomenal as a cornerback at 6'4". Brian Thomas, I don't know where he's going to go. I mean, it could be Texas A&M. It could be Alabama. It could be LSU. It could be Ole Miss. It could be anybody. People are running out of scholarships right now. And he probably already knows where he's going. And I hope it's LSU in-state. I think he could be another great receiver for LSU. They need a big, tall receiver. LSU doesn't have anybody like him. They don't have a big, tall guy like this. He would be incredible for LSU in their offense. He would play right away and be a star right away. And a difference maker, all SEC receiver right away. And an All-American type of player. That takes us to number 3. And the reason I have Jack Besh at 3 at receiver from St. Thomas More, the only difference between Brian Thomas and Jack Besh is Jack will block, and he's an accomplished blocker right now, and his hands are a little bit better. He's more complete and more ready for everything else, but Brian Thomas and Jack are both going to be All-Americans. So it's kind of like, how do you compare guys? They're both going to be All-Americans. And Jack Besh, I watched as a sophomore at St. Thomas More High School. He's 6'2", 215, A lot of people are trying to pigeonhole him as a tight end, H-back. No. No. He's a receiver. He's Jordy Nelson. He's Jordy Nelson. If you remember Jordy Nelson, Kansas State, the Green Bay Packers, 6'2", 6'3", about 210, 215, 220. Not a tight end, but a big, tall kid that can run, strong hands, great blocker, physical, and is not going to let you beat him. He's Jordy Nelson. I'll take Jordy Nelson's all day long. But again, Brian Thomas and Jack Besh are both going to be phenomenal. I wish they were both going to be Tigers in the end. But Jack Besh signed with LSU in the early signing period. He's 6'2", again, 215 pounds of muscle. And he's unguardable for a linebacker. You can't guard him. In a corner, he'll just run over you. And if the ball's in the air, like Brian Thomas, it's his. You're not getting it. He's going to take it. You're not going to get the ball. He's ready to go. Jack's ready to go catch some footballs for LSU. And again, he can block. He can block like a fullback. He's a tough kid. Man, he's tough. At number 2 is Peyton Todd, punter, West Monroe High School. And you're probably saying, Lee, why do you have a punter at number 2? Well, this kid's going to be the best punter to punt for LSU since Donnie Jones, who had a 15-year career in the NFL from Catholic High in Baton Rouge. Peyton Todd's the best punter I've ever seen in 35 years of my life in this business. He's 6'5", 222 pounds, and when the ball comes off his foot, it looks like it comes out of a ball machine. The hang time is so long, you can actually eat a sandwich before you have to catch it. Peyton Todd could end up being the best punter in college football as a true freshman. He will start for LSU as a true freshman punter. He's built like Zach Von Rossenberg, but the difference is Peyton Todd was an all-state linebacker. He's very athletic. He runs a 4.6 in the 40. He'll weigh about 235 when he's done growing. Probably almost 6'6" right now. He's a franchise punter. He's a 15-year punter in the NFL. That's why I have him at number 2. At number 1, the number 1 player in the state of Louisiana, the most gifted player I saw on the field, with effort and God-given ability, and the ability to be a first-round pick, and the ability to be the number 1 pick of a draft, is Savion Jones, defensive end, St. James High School in Vacherie, St. James, Louisiana. Played for a great coaching staff, Robert Valdez. He got great coaching, but let me tell you why he's number 1, besides what I told you already. He's 6'5", 245 pounds. He runs the 40 in 4.5 seconds. He's not a guy that times well to be ranked. He's a guy on the field that's that dude that dominates the game. And by the way, he's that guy that runs a 4.5 40 at 250 pounds. He's that guy that you can't block in high school, and he's that guy that you can't block in college. He's not signed. He's supposed to sign with LSU February the 3rd, and I think he's the most important recruit for new D coordinator, Durante Jones. If Savion Jones does sign with LSU on February 3rd, like we think he will be a starter his first year. And in that, I'm saying, in the rotation right away, this is a guy that can get 12, 13 sacks in a season or more. He's more gifted than Chasson coming out of high school. He's more gifted than anybody I've seen coming out as a DN in Louisiana in my 30 years. As a DN, buck linebacker at 6'5", 245. His first step off the line of scrimmage as a pass rusher is insane. And he plays hard, by the way, every play. He chases down ball carriers from sideline to sideline like he's 5'10", 170. I'm telling you, I can sit here and talk all day about Savion Jones and how special he can be. And guess what? He's lean. So he's going to be about 260, 265 when he fills out, and he's still going to be lean. He's going to look like that Ohio State defensive end that's now playing for the Redskins. That's what he's going to be. Savion Jones can change a program. And just to give you an idea, to go a step further, Marcavius Mingo, who came out of West Monroe, remember how good he was as a pass rusher at LSU? Didn't get a lot of sacks. He's nowhere near how talented this kid is. There's no comparison. Just to give you an idea, there's no comparison with Sam Montgomery, with Chasson. This kid's better than all of these guys. He is gifted, and he's tough, and he could end up being the best pass rusher in college football. LSU needs this kid. They need this kid to build their defense around Durante Jones, the new defensive coordinator from the Minnesota Vikings. If they get this kid to sign like he should, they're on their way to have one of their best defensive lines in the history of the school if they get all these guys to still come back that we mentioned earlier in the show. Ollie Gay, Andre Anthony, Glenn Logan, Neil Farrell, and then the rest of the young players, Jacoby and Guillory. Joe Evans from Haynesville, who was hurt a lot this year, will be a great player. So the future is bright. They need to sign Savion. They need to get him signed. And I hope you enjoyed the show today, going in depth in the top 25 players. It was really 31 total, 6 tied at 25. And we'll talk to you Friday. We're very excited about Friday's show. We're working on a couple of big-time guests for Friday. I think you'll be pleased who we have on Friday for our interview on Friday. But I hope everybody has a wonderful Wednesday. Be safe on the streets, driving, wherever you're driving, or on your TV or your computer. God bless everybody. We'll talk to you Friday.
Thanks for listening to the Sports Scouting Report podcast with Lee Brecheen.